Rightio. Okay, thanks for joining this Zoom meeting and this presentation on the Alpine flora of Tasmania. As most of you will know, I've done several trips to Tassie, and each time I go, I have a terminal illness for the place, which only gets worse. So much so that we have even talked about moving there for maybe a short period of time. I have long service coming up soon, and there's probably no guesses as to where we'll probably be utilising this time anyway. In this photo here, we've got a forest of eucalyptus coccifera at Mountfield National Park. It's quite a gnarly snow gum, one of the many Tasmanian snow gums, and puts on a definite show, that's for sure. And definitely it provides a lot of colour too. And in some examples, you will see lots of red on coccifera as well. I really don't have enough superlatives to describe Tasmania, but needless to say, it's the most mountainous island on the world. Even though they are shorter than the mainland, with Mount Ossa reaching a top of 1,617 metres. They seem to be somewhat steeper and more rugged than the mainland, but of course there's always exceptions. It also does have an extensive flattish elevated plateau in the Central Highlands. It's averaged between 900 and 1,100 metres in altitude. The alpine areas in Tassie vary a lot with the tree line, moving from about 600 metres in the southwest up to about 1,200 metres in the northeast. And most of the time, there's no distinctive sharp edges where trees stop growing. It's very variable. This is all to do with its location and its maritime climate, which heavily influences the state. It's also very windy, as it's located in the roaring 40s, which brings all sorts of weather to bear on the island. Rainfall on the west coast can be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 metres annually, and even some of the mountain ranges in the southwest have been known to see anywhere up to 4 to 5 metres of rainfall per year. Whereas the east coast is far drier and probably a lot more like Victoria due to the mountains across the middle of the state, which causes a rain shadow. Interestingly, due to its maritime climate, snow does not last long on the ground, whereas on the mainland it will last for several months. In Tassie, the snow lie is much shorter, but then again, snow is more likely at any time of the year there. It also has been heavily glaciated, with the last glaciers disappearing about 10,000 years ago, which has left behind a unique wilderness for us to enjoy today. As noted on this slide, there's roughly 450 alpine species, and we include in that tally grasses and sedges and all plant life, basically. Which we'll get into some of them very soon. Here we're on the top of the Needles Range, which is about 1,000 metres. Left of centre in the distance is what's known as the Thumbs Range. This tops out at about 1,200 metres. On the left behind the Thumbs is Clear Hill at about 1,198 metres. And then there's a sharp point just right of centre, which is Reed's Peak, which is about 1,290 metres. As you can see, peaks are not high, but it's quite rugged and extremely steep. These ranges are all on the northern edge of the Southwest National Park, an immense wilderness covering about 6,180 square kilometres, all virtually inaccessible except by foot or air. It also joins up to the Franklin Gordon Wild Rivers National Park, which is about 4,500 square kilometres. Both of these parks help make up the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, comprising some 15,800 square kilometres. In area which this equates to about 25% of Tasmania, an area of pristine, rugged wilderness which is virtually untouched by humans. So where can you see alpine flora in Tasmania? We'll start at the top right-hand corner of your screen, which is Ben Lomond, a well-known little national park up there in the northeast of Tasmania. Of note at Ben Lomond, there is a species of cushion plant known, which is Veronica ciliolata subspecies fjordensis, commonly known as the Ben Lomond cushion plant, and it's only found on the Hamilton Crags at Ben Lomond, between 1470 and 1530 metres. Excuse me. Can also be seen in New Zealand as well. So quite a disjunct population. If we go anti-clockwise across to the left-hand top of the screen, you've got Cradle Mount, which is very well known, easily accessible, an excellent place to see lots of alpine flora. Directly below Cradle Mountain there, you've got Mount Anne. Again, this area down here in the southwest is very hard, or not, you can get to it quite easily, but very rugged and remote. An excellent place to see things like Guillium talbotianum, and also down in the Western Arthurs, which is the next one down. Very rugged, very steep. And then bottom right photo, you've got you've got the top of the Needles range. An excellent place to see Isophysis tasmanica, Dracophyllum milliganii, Eucalyptus vernicosa, the varnish gum, and many other wonderful species. And then up from that, you've got Mountfield National Park, which is really an incredible place, which I'll touch on a bit more. So if you have limited time and options when you're in Tasmania, I would highly recommend Mountfield National Park. It has an incredible range of flora, from wet sclerophyllous forests right through beech forest to subalpine and alpine habitats. So going clockwise from lower right, you've got the magnificent Eucalyptus regnans, tallest flowering tree in the world, basically, and obviously the tallest gum. And then to the left of that, you've got just up at Wombat Moor is a forest of Eucalyptus subcronata, I think it is, and also Eucalyptus coccifera, two more snow gums. Interesting elevated area here, quite cold, windswept. And then next to that, at Lake Dove, you've got the incredible Pandani, which fringes that lake. And interesting mixed eucalypt forest and heading into beech forests as well. And then next one across to the left, bottom left hand, you've got up into the sort of nearly the Tarn Shelf region of Mountfield National Park. A very coniferous lowlands, lots of different conifers, and really getting into the alpine plants. The next up there on the Tarn Shelf circuit, you start seeing the cushion plants and the mosaic heath communities. Such an incredible environment. And then top right, you've got the Tarn Shelf, which is, again, you get lots of Nothofagus gunnii and all the conifers up there, the small conifers and the big ones. Athrotaxis laxifolius, Cuprosaudes, Seligenoides, Ferrosphaera, the creeping pine, and the list goes on. But so if you definitely got limited time, I would highly recommend going to Mountfield National Park. Okay. This is quite commonly seen across Tasmania and other places. Ibertia procumbens, prostrate, about 30 centimetres wide, leaves about 20 centimetres long, linear, elliptic in shape. There's a lovely 5 golden petals. In Tasmania, it's found from the coastal heathlands all the way up into the subalpine, alpine areas at about 1,000 metres. You can see this on the mainland as well in Victoria and New South Wales. Always provides a beautiful bright splash of colour. Knowltonia crassifolia, also known as the mountain anemone. It's a lovely perennial herb with leaves in a basal rosette, which are thick and they're divided into 3 coarsely toothed leaflets, which you can.
Different name before?
No.
Never been a ranunculus or an enemy.
It used to be an enemy, Otto.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I thought we muted.
Okay, starting in on Knowltonia crassifolia, known as the mountain anemone. It's found in the southwest to about 1,000 metres, at about 1,000 metres altitude. It's a lovely little plant, which was known as an anemone crassifolia in the past. Moving on to Boronia citriodora, the lemon-scented Boronia, small shrub, 0.5 to 1 metre by similar width-wise, can be shorter in exposed locations. Pinnate crowded leaves, which produce a strong lemon aroma when crushed. There's that lovely citrus perfume. Flowers are 4 petals, white, pink in colour, and it can be found in various locations in Tasmania, in Alpine heath and coniferous heath, sedge lands in the eastern and central mountains. One of Tasmania's well-known plants, the Blandfordia punicea, Christmas bells, a tussock-forming plant. Leaves which can be up to 1 metre in length, quite thick and finely toothed on the margins, and they have a prominent midrib, and they can be often quite reddish in colour as well. There's a stout flowering stem to about 1 metre, bearing up to 20 bell-shaped flowers, normally red in colour outside and with that tinge of yellow inside. This endemic is found in alpine heath, coniferous heath, and deciduous heath in the western mountains of Tassie. Microcacris tetragona, also known as the strawberry pine, but really not really a pine. It's a podocarp. It's prostrate and spreading with leaves overlapping and oppressed, causing the branches to appear square, which you can see in that bottom left photo. Has separate male and female plants. The female cones are terminal, solitary, and turn scarlet and succulent-like when ripe. Photo in the top left. This endemic dominates the coniferous heath areas in the central and western mountains. Interesting, it also has a fossil history dating back about 66 million years. It's considered to be part of the Gondwanan flora, which includes Antarctica. And pollen has been found in South America, India, South Africa, and Antarctica. This paleoendemic is now only found in the mountains of Tasmania. It's quite an incredible plant and easy in cultivation as well. Here out the Needles Range, the top of the Needles Range. It's an impressive ridge with needle-like protrusions jutting into the sky. A lot of mountains in Tasmania consist of dolerite, but here we have a quartzite range, common in the west and southern areas. In the distance to the left, we have Mount Field National Park, Mount Field West and Mount Field East.
Lying on that dining board here.
It's his favourite spot.
Yeah, it was.
Here we have another of Tasmania's incredible endemics, the pencil pine. Again, not a pine, but another podocarp related. This is actually related to the Californian redwoods. Even though in this shot it's very washed out and the timing and lighting's all wrong, it's still quite a beautiful scene with these podocarps gracing the aptly named Artist Pool behind Cradle Mountain, which is looming in the background. Quite wonderful to see these trees. It's another example of Athrotaxis cuprossoides. It's one on the left here at Pine Lake. It's a well-known spot for pencil pines. They have a pyramidal habit with upright branches. The leaves are 2 to 4 mil in length and width. Again, they're strongly overlapping, and they have small woody cones, only about 1.2 to 1.5 centimetres in diameter. These trees dominate coniferous heath on the central plateau and westwards from there. In the right-hand photo, you can make out the male and female parts of this podocarp. Beautiful trees. In the Cradle Mountain Lakes and Clear National Park, there are plenty of lovely scenes like this. Of note are the Athrotaxis cuprossoides with their pyramidal habit. And then intermingled amongst them is the lighter green Nothophagus gunnii, the deciduous beech, which turns golden yellow in autumn and is in full swing now, probably just past its best, apparently. Normally about Anzac weekend, it's at its best in Tassie for its autumn show. Here we've got another podocarp. This is Ferrosphaera hookeriana, also known as a drooping pine. It's a shrub 1.5 to 3 metres in height and about 1 to 4 wide. The leaves are small, dense and oppressed and spiralling. Male and female cones on separate plants. It's often found around stream and lakes on the central, western and southwest mountains between 1,300 and 1,400 metres. These ones are at Mount Field National Park. Staying with the conifer theme, this is Athrotaxis laxifolia. It's a natural hybrid between cuprossoides and Seliginoides. Grows between 6 to 20 metres in height and 3 to 10 metres wide. Leaves are a little bit bigger, about 6 mil long with pointed tips and clasping the branches. Mature cones about 1.5 centimetres in diameter and may only be present at 5-year intervals or longer. It's found in areas where its parents both grow, usually between 700 and 1,200 metres in altitude, mostly in damp depressions along streams and lake edges. This one, located on the Tarn Shelf at Mount Field, has decided to take a nap in one of the many tarns here. Excuse me. Here we've got another view amongst the needles on the needle ranges. It's just a very interesting uplifted piece of layered quartzite. You may have noticed here, excuse me, there's quite a few burnt areas on the needles, and this is from a fire about 3 or 4 years ago now. But everything seems to be coming back quite well. Richia scoparia, also commonly called scoparia, a much branched shrub, 1/2 to 3 metres in height, 1 to 2 wide, usually smaller in size at altitude. The leaves are green, rigid, 3 to 6 centimetres long and tapering to a sharp point. Also overlapping around the stems. Flowers are terminal spikes, 4 to 12 centimetres, with colours ranging from white to yellow, pink to red and orange. Interestingly, the petals are fused into what is known as a calyptra. These are removed by snow skinks and birds to get to the nectar, thus exposing the reproductive parts of the flower for pollination. The wind also helps with the removal of the calyptra. Flowers during summer, during December to February. This Tasmanian endemic is widespread and common on almost every mountain amongst many different habitats. You can see in the bottom left-hand photo, you've got the reproductive parts of the flowers are exposed. You compare that to the right-hand photo, where you can see that the calyptra is still enclosing those parts. Trachyphyllum milliganii. Milligan's mountain heath. Small shrub, 15 to 25 centimetres tall, with each branch an apparent separate individual. Leaves are narrow and up to 15 centimetres long, curved downwards, curling up at the ends, crowded and forming what looks like a rosette on each branch. The inflorescence is a terminal spike with lots of small flowers, white to pink in colour. This Tasmanian endemic is a common co-dominant with the incredibly beautiful Isophysis tasmanica in alpine heath and sedgelands, in saddles of the western mountains. It's also found in deciduous heath, coniferous heath, and balsa heath in the same areas. And these were flowering profusely on the Needles Range in the southwest of Tasmania, just back in mid-December last year. Truly incredible species of plant. Actually, in the big photo here, you can quite clearly see that where the fires have been, and the shrubs that have been burnt out are mostly Eucalyptus vernicosa, the varnish gum. Isophysis tasmanica, also known as Huardia or the Tasmanian purple star. It's a tufted perennial with erect blue-green leaves arranged in fans. The flowers are dark purple magenta, terminal and solitary on an erect scape just above the foliage. Occasionally yellow flowers are produced on some plants. This incredible, beautiful endemic can be found from sea level on peaty swamps in the southwest up to exposed saddles and at rock outcrops of the west and central highlands to 1,300 metres. These again were seen on the Needles Range at about 960 metres. And the characteristic feature of this plant, this monotypic genus, is its superior ovary, which places it as one of the earliest lineages of Iridoideae in the iris family, branching some 66 million years ago. You look at the phylogeny tree and hypothesis from several citations, it's more likely that Iridaceae originated in Antarctica, Australasia, and then radiated to the rest of the world, and radiated from here to the rest of the world, leaving Australasia poor in Iridaceae species. But we've been left with Isophysis tasmanica, so that's magnificent. Just some more shots of this remarkable plant. You can see here they're quite large clumps of it. I was quite chuffed to discover this in flower when I was there in mid-December. Well, I did have some pointers on when to find it, so I was thankful for that. Another lovely endemic, Helichrysum pumilum varieties baffulatum, the western everlasting. It's a herb with rosettes of foliage with leaves spatulate in shape, 1 to 3 centimetres long. There's a grey upper surface and light grey underneath. Flowers are pinkish in bud, opening to white, papery inflorescences on a white woolly scape, 5 to 10 centimetres tall. The phyllaries around the disc, Florida white, but can have streaks of pink through them. As I said, this is endemic to Tassie and found in the Western Mountains in Alpine and heathlands, usually on thin skeletal soils. And here you can see it's growing amongst the rocks in the needles range. Glycinia alpina, the alpine coral fern, it forms dense patches and is dominant in alpine sedgeland, bogs and coniferous heath, also balsa heath and heath habitats. Common in the eastern and central mountains, grows to about 15 to 25 centimetres tall and has much divided fronds, which you can see there. It's quite striking, and it's also found in New Zealand, this one. Here we have Barn Bluff from Lake Windermere on the overland track. Of note in the foreground is Glycinia alpina, all that low, dusty orange coloured ground cover. Further in the distance, just before the lake, are large patches of button grass, more of a golden yellowy green colour. The Gymnochernus spiricephalus, which is quite widespread across Tasmania and synonymous with bushwalkers. Also fringing the lake, you can see that typical pyramid shape of Athrotaxis cuprossoides, the pencil pine. Gaultheria hispida, another Tasmanian endemic. This can be found in the wet forest and alpine woodlands. It's usually an erect branch shrub up to 2 metres tall, but small in an open alpine settings. Young branches are covered with rigid reddish bristles. The leaves ellipse to lance-shaped, has small white urn-shaped flowers in terminal clusters or axillary groups, and the fruit is a reddish capsule which is enclosed by the white fleshy sepals, which you can see on the left there. Quite a beautiful tree, well, it's not a tree, but quite a beautiful large shrub. Riccia pandanifolia, known as pandani, and no doubt needing no introduction. It's one of the weirdest heath plants around in this part of the world. It's an erect shrub growing anywhere from 2 to 12 metres tall, with leaves up to 1 metre or more in length, strap-like and tapering to a point. Strongly curved downwards, then upwards near the older tips. Also have the dead and aging leaves persist, covering the trunk. I think this may provide a little bit of protection for the trunk in that cold climate. The inflorescence emerges from the leaf axis at the top in panicles up to 25 centimetres in length, usually white or pink. This species is normally unbranched, apart from a lowland species which does branch. Also damaged ones all will branch as well. This incredible, bizarre Tasmanian endemic can be found in deciduous heath, coniferous heath, heathlands, alpine sedgelands and rainforests in the central and western mountains. A wonderful site here at Lake Dobson, Mount Field National Park. I'm not sure what a group of pandanus would be called, but I put forward a rustling of pandani, as the sound of the leaves makes when you pass through them sounds like something rustling. Janet, my wife, says it sounds like someone whispering to you. Maybe it should be a whispering of pandani. Anyway, I'm only joking. Rubus gunnianus, the mountain raspberry. It's a rosette-forming herb connected by trailing stems, dark green shiny leaves, creamy white flowers, nearly subsessile or sessile, has a sweet fleshy red fruit. This is another Tasmanian endemic which is widespread and common in alpine vegetation types. It doesn't have any thorns or spines either. It's not real showy, but it is quite something to see, and it's quite a neat little plant. Euarchia meridithiae, also known as the rusty cushion plant. It has very close branches, tightly packed together, causing it to grow in the shape of a cushion plant. Silvery grey leaves of rusty coloured hairs. Small white papery flowers, subsessile or up to 3 centimetres high. This beautiful endemic is found in montane vegetation or bolster heath communities in the western and central alpine areas. Quite a stunning one, this one. Down in the southwest, you have the Western Arthurs. It has an unmistakable jagged ridge line in southwest Tasmania. It's a wild landscape with probably one of, or not the hardest walking tracks in Australia, and not to be tempted by the faint-hearted. Epicris serpulifolia, the Alpine heath. It's much branch, spreading shrub to 1 metre high. The leaves are crowded and at right angles to the stem, 2 to 6 mm in length, blade shape and tapering to a blunt point. The white flowers are crowded at the ends of the branches and is very showy when it's in full flower. This endemic is widespread in many habitats right throughout the mountains of Tasmania. Barria rubioides, quite a common plant in Tasmania and elsewhere. It's a wiry scrambling shrub in many forms, ranging from prostrate up to 2 metres tall or more, and it can form extensive thickets at lower altitudes. Higher up it is usually small, this one being more or less prostrate. It has opposite leaves with 3 leaflets, giving the appearance of a whorl of 6 leaves. Flowers in the leaf axils white or pink, and slightly bell-shaped and hanging down, and it is very widespread across Tasmania, apart from being absent from the highest points. Also in Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. Spangelia incarnata, pink swamp heath. It's an erect, sparsely branched shrub to 1 metre or more, or it can be a small cushion-like plant and many forms in between. Overlapping leaves, sheathing completely around the stems and tapering to a hard point. It's similar to the Riccia foliage actually. Also has, you can see there, the pink flowers, terminal on branches and quite showy. This is quite common in the alpine habitats of Tasmania. Can also be seen in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and across in New Zealand. Across the Central Plateau and in the mountains of Tasmania, there are many tarns, small little lakes left by glaciation. This is one of the many that can be found at Mountfield National Park. There are actually thousands of these small lakes. Fringing this tarn, we've got carpets of Astelia alpina, variety alpina, pineapple grass. You can see that silvery foliage. Euphrasia gibbsii, the broadleaf eyebright. It's a common herb across the alpine areas of Tassie. This species has at least 5 subspecies, possibly many more, and it's very variable. Flowers are white with purple striations and yellow dots. Prostrate stems at first, then becoming vertical 20 to 30 centimetres tall. Quite a lovely little plant. And being a Euphrasia and eyebright, it's in the Orobanchaceae family, which makes these plants parasitic or semi-parasitic to some extent. Barn Bluff, looking ominous here in the Cradle Mountain Plateau. Heavy glaciation occurred in this area. You can see the dolerite boulder screes on the side of the mountain. And on the plateau here, you've got an altitude of about 1,000 meters. And you could consider the habitat to be probably coniferous. There's a few larger shrubs which would be pines, some of those smaller pines, and amongst the smaller growing stuff, there was a lot of strawberry, a lot of creeping pine too, the strawberry pine. Quite brutal across here when it's cold and windy, and not a nice place to be when the weather's not nice. But when the weather is nice, it is beautiful. Artria comberide, comb heath. It's a small rare shrub which would be easily overlooked, but upon closer inspection it oozes class and sophistication. Even the rough woody branched appearance has a beauty about it. Flowers are pink and tubular in shape on short stalks, emerging from the upper leaf axils. The leaves are only 3 to 4 mm in length and nearly horizontal from the branches, round with a pointed tip, arranged in whorls around the stems. The abaxal surface is mostly green, with the adaxal surface, which is the top surface, mostly red. The margin is also red. This red coloration on the leaves is a characteristic of alpine species, which is caused by an increase of anthocyanin, which absorbs ultraviolet light and converts this into heat energy, which warms the plant earlier in the growing season. This Tasmanian endemic is found in deciduous heath, bolster heath, alpine sedgeland, and coniferous heath in the Western Mountains. What a beautiful little plant. Eucalyptus coccifera, one of the Tasmanian snow gums, can be 3 to 15 meters tall, but can also just be 5 meters tall in higher exposed conditions where it grows like a mallee, a multi-stem large shrub. Smooth grey and cream coloured bark makes this a lovely tree. Sometimes you also see some red in it as well. Found in subalpine habitats above 800 meters in central and southern Tasmania. Here we can see this endemic standing in a bed of pineapple grass. Nothofagus gunnii, the deciduous beech, also called tanglefoot, can grow to 8 meters tall, but it's normally found at about this size, 1 to 3 meters tall. Trying to push through a grove of these is nigh impossible, and it will tangle you up, hence its other common name, used by bushwalkers, tanglefoot. The leaves are alternate, simple, ovate in outline with rounded teeth on the margin. The lamina is also crinkled, gives that nice, looks like chips really, crinkle cut chips. Colour is bright glossy green, and then in autumn they turn to the golden yellow and occasionally red. This is the only cold winter deciduous plant native to Australia. Male and female flowers on the same tree, and they are inconspicuous, as you can see in the bottom right-hand photo. This Tasmanian endemic is restricted to high altitude, high rainfall areas where there's no fire activity in the central and western mountains. What a stunning little plant. A common thing to do in autumn is to go and see the turning of the fagus, which is a spectacular sight. Here we've got a couple of young Eucalyptus cocciferas standing out on the tarn shelf at Mount Field, creating a lovely scene. The green band of trees heading up the hill is most likely the pencil pine Athrotaxis cuprosaudes. Very rocky and exposed location, which was heavily glaciated. Another of the well-known Tasmanian endemics, Tilapia truncata, Tasmanian waratah, a dense upright shrub, much loved and admired, and rightly so. Lance-shaped leaves, 5 to 12 centimetres in length, Has terminal flowers, hemispherical, red in colour, and occasionally you'll see a yellow one. They contain between 10 to 35 individual flowers, mostly on a shrub to 3 metres or a tree to 10 metres. It can be found in the central and southern and western areas of Tasmania, on moist acidic soils in wet sclerophyll forests, or subalpine scrub from 600 to 1200 metres. This endemic is another paleoendemic which probably predates the splitting of Gondwana over 60 million years ago. Excuse me. Just another view of the incredible Western Arthurs, just showing how rugged it is. Tough place for plants to live, but they seem to be doing pretty okay. Guium talbotianum, Tasmanian snow rose, a perennial herb endemic to the southwest, where it's confined to high rocky mountains, like the previous photo in the Western Arthurs and Mount Anne. Covered with fine hairs, leaves on long stalks, kidney-shaped, 5 to 10 centimetres in diameter, and wrinkled on the adaxal surface. Has large white flowers, 4 to 5 centimetres in diameter, on long peduncles from late December through to March. Normally found sheltering in cracks and crevices provided by rocky outcrops. It's a rare species that faces several threats, including the obvious one: climate is warming and shrinking its habitat. The threat of fire is increasing because of the aforementioned threat, and also trampling from increased human presence from hiking. A beautiful species anyway. Salmisia saxifraga, snow daisy. It's a dainty little salmisia with grey-green rosettes of foliage. Leaves are crowded and overlapping. Single white flowers, about 3 centimetres in diameter. It's found only at high altitudes in a wide array of habitats and endemic to Tasmania. In the bottom left-hand photo there, you can see it growing in amongst some cushion plants here, those silver rosettes. Quite stunning foliage, really. Xerochrysum milliganii, Milligan's everlasting, a rosette herb with strongly overlapping leaves, all coming to a defined point. Single flowers, terminal and solitary, spreading white papery bracts. Can have a flush of red underneath the bracts. This is another endemic found in the western and central mountains in coniferous heath, bolster heath, alpine sedgeland, field mark, and grasslands. It's quite lovely. Eucalyptus vernicosa. I've mentioned this a couple of times already. The varnish gum. It's a shrub to 1 metre tall, or a mallee to 4 metres in protected areas. Smooth greyish brown bark, egg-shaped leaves, glossy green. Flower buds in groups of 3 in the leaf axils. The typical eucalyptus type flower, white in colour and white in colour. It's considered to be the smallest eucalypt. This Tasmanian endemic is only found in the Alpine regions in the west and southwest between 700 and 1350 metres. Mostly on peaty soils on top of quartzite or sandstone bedrock, and usually found above the tree line where it will be growing as a shrub. These are on the Needles Range, where there was a recent fire back in 2019, which basically burnt them all out, but they are growing back again from their lignotubers. Interestingly, Tasmania has the smallest eucalyptus and the tallest eucalyptus, Eucalyptus regnans, growing at 100 plus metres in some examples. This is a lovely little tree, this one. Again, this is an overview of Lake Oberon in the Western Arthur Range. Lake Oberon was made famous by Peter Dombrowski. If you get a chance to have a look at that photo online, it's incredible. It's quite a beautiful place. Way in the distance here, to the right, a very sharp point is Federation Peak, which people may know about as well. Donatia novae zelandii, the western cushion plant. It's a bright green hard cushion herb. Leaves sessile 5 to 6 mil in length with a pointed apex. Leaf base has dense tufts of white hairs, 2 to 3 mil in length. White flowers are solitary and sessile, 5 to 6 mil in diameter. It's a dominant of balsa heath, usually mixed with other cushion species, found in the western and central mountains and also New Zealand. Here at Cradle Mountain, you can see it with Pterygopappus lawrentii. It's the sage cushion plant. It's those greyish coloured streaks amongst the cushions and other cushion species. It can form large, expansive cushions, as we can see here as well. Anopteris glandulosus just snuck into this, as it's sort of more so not in the alpine areas, but it does creep into the subalpine. It's a native laurel shrub or small tree endemic to the south and southwest of Tasmania, usually found in the moist understory of temperate rainforests and wet sclerophyll, from sea level up to 1200 on some mountains. 2 to 4 metres in height as a shrub, or 10 metres as a tree, depending on its location. Has quite large leaves, 7 to 17 centimetres long, dark green and glossy, and the flowers on a terminal raceme about 17 centimetres long. Bell-shaped, white and pink in colour, quite a lovely plant. Here we've got some old trunks of Athrotaxis cuprossoides, pencil pine, on the tarn shelf at Mount Field. This is underneath them, looking up into the canopy. I'd be interested to know how old these are, and I forgot to mention before that Athrotaxis cuprossoides grows to over 1,000 years in age, so you can imagine that these trees have seen a lot. In between Mount Ossa, which is on the left, and Mount Doris is on the right, we've got a paddock of Pterygopappus lawrentii, the sage cushion plant. You can see all those light greyish-green patches. We've got Riccia on the left as well, and then they've got a large amount of Delselma archeri, chestnut pine on the right, which is quite similar to Phesophera hookeranii, a drooping pine. This is just off the overland track and quite a beautiful area. Here we've got a lovely grove of Riccia pandanifolia on the approach to Mount Ossa on the overland track. I always like seeing these plants, and it's quite amazing to see them like this, because they don't really look like an alpine species at all. They look, to me, sometimes they look more like a palm crossed with a bromeliad or something, and look very out of place, but quite spectacular. Here we've got Springelia. It's a Tasmanian endemic. It's a small subshrub that grows in alpine cushion plants. It's mostly prostrate. Springelia minima. Sorry, I forgot its epithet. The leaves are overlapping, sheathing around the stems and ending in a pointed tip, 3 to 5 mil in length and only a couple mil wide. Flowers are small, only 2 to 5 mil, and white and nearly subsessile. Flowers during December and January. And here it is in the Mount Field tarn shelf. Also in this picture, in the main picture, sort of just left the center at the front there, at the bottom, we've got Drosera arcturi, the common alpine sundew, carnivorous rosetted herb with erect leaves, spathulate shaped, quite often red, covered with glandular hairs on the upper portions. Has a white flower on the vertical stalks, which are quite tall, taller than the foliage. Grows in bogs, tarns and seepages, sphagnum bogs and bolster heath, where it's found growing on top of cushion plants. Also seen in New South Wales, Victoria and New Zealand. Bellandina montana, mountain rocket, another classic Tasmanian alpine, low growing shrub from 10 centimetres up to a metre or more. Leaves are thick and variable, 1 to 6 centimetres in length, usually with 3 broad lobes. Flowers are arranged in a terminal raceme on short stems of the foliage, white and pale pink in colour. The flowers are followed by egg-shaped bright red or yellow fruit sacs. These can be found on nutrient-poor soils, mostly derived from dolerite, but also seen on quartzite and basalt. It's widespread through all types of vegetation above 1,000 metres. Phylogenetic studies of this Tasmanian endemic place it as basal to the rest of the Proteaceae, meaning again it's one of the earliest offshoots. In fact, it's considered to have diverged from all other members of Proteaceae first. So quite an ancient plant. Riccia alpina, the short candle heath. Small shrub with spreading branches, with each branch end congested with leaves, appearing as a rosette, lance-shaped to 10 centimetres in length and recurving strongly, and the old leaves persist as well. Inflorescence is erect and terminal with many small flowers starting off red and then fading to cream. This endemic can be found in the southwest mountains in alpine sedgelands, alpine heath and bolster heath communities. It's quite spectacular. Here we've got Mount Geryon on the left and the Acropolis on the right. You have a coating of snow, and in the front there you can see some Nothofagus gunnii with yellow leaves in autumn. Estelia alpina, variety alpina, pineapple grass. I can only assume its common name comes from its leaves looking like the top of a pineapple, but I'm not sure. And grass maybe because it forms extensive mats. Other than that, I'm lost as it's not a pineapple nor a grass. It's mat-forming perennial with leaves 6 to 40 centimetres in length and up to 3 centimetres wide, a green or grey-green above and grey-silvery below. Female inflorescence usually hidden in between the leaves, with the male inflorescence being more prominent. White-green flowers. Red berries are present after flowering, but again, they're usually right at the base of the plant, hard to see. It's widespread in Tasmania and then found on just about every mountain. Phylacne collinsoi, the yellow cushion plant. It's a yellowish green hard cushion, forming mats up to 10 centimetres high or a bit more, and spreading up to a metre or more. Short erect stems are tightly packed together with leaves 3 to 4 mil long, sessile and ending in a blunt tip. They are also crowded and closely pressed against the stems. Flowers are virtually sessile, 4 mil in diameter and white in colour, 5 to 6 spreading lobes. Flowering during December and January. It is found on the high peaks of the central and western mountains, where it's dominant in bolster heath communities, mostly on sloping areas where the snow lies a bit longer. Also found in New Zealand. It's a sensational cushion plant, this one. Dracophyllum minimum, the heath cushion plant. Bright green, reddish green hard cushion, forming large mats. The leaves are bright green, sessile with a broad sheathing base and finishing with a reddish tip. Only a few only a few millimeters in length. The flowers are solitary, sessile or nearly so, tubular, again with 5 spreading lobes, and only about 4 to 5 mil in diameter. White in colour. This Tasmanian endemic is widespread in bolster heath communities, usually growing together with a mix of cushion species forming a cushion mosaic. And we'll touch on that a bit more later. This type of community. It can be found in the central and western mountains above 1,200 metres. And this is one of my favourites, as are all the Tasmanian cushions, in fact. Pterygopappus lawrencei. This is the sage cushion plant. It's easily identified because of its sage green colouring, soft grey-green tufted cushion herb. Leaves are 4 mil in length, greyish green, very hairy, and forming tight, rounded hexagons. You can see that in the bottom photo there, in the middle there. Small whitish flowers protrude from the centre of these leaf hexagons. They're not showy, but interesting nevertheless. This incredible endemic can be found on most mountains, usually on thin peaty soils from heavily eroded dolerite, and mostly found in cushion mosaics with the other cushions already mentioned. It's rarely as a monoculture, but it can be in some places. Abrotonella fosteroides, the eastern cushion plant. It's a hard, bright green cushion, which can be a metre across or more. Leaves are 3 to 4 mil in length, sessile and crowded, sheathing from the base to a pointed tip, and it has a soft, hairy-like protrusion from the tip of that leaf. Solitary, tiny white flowers on very short stems that protrude just above the leaves. This Tasmanian endemic is dominant in bolster heath in eastern, central, and western mountains, but most common in the eastern mountains. It can form large colonies by itself, with western and central populations normally found in a more cushion mosaic habitat in high altitude saddles. This is another incredible cushion plant. Now, identifying cushion plants is when they're not in flower, they can be very hard to distinguish. Most of them, apart from one really, which is Pterygopappus lawrencei in the top left hand there. It's the most easiest one to distinguish because of its grey-green colouring and with those rosettes. Right below it is the Phylactine colensoi. Again, those leaves 3 to 4 mil in length, greenish in colour, has a wide base and it comes to a blunt apex. And the whole plant can have a yellowish tinge. Now then below that one, you've got the Donatia novaezelandii. Has a wide base, again coming to a point, flattish, but the leaves are more of a flattish in appearance. And at the leaf axil, you can see silky hairs there, that white sort of fluff. Top right-hand corner, you've got the Dracophyllum minimum. The most easiest way to find this is it has a reddish tip on the leaf. So whenever you see a cushion plant, it has that sort of a reddish appearance. It'll be Dracophyllum minimum. Again, these are all with under high magnification. These photos, it's very hard to see these with the naked eye. And that goes for the bottom right-hand photo, the Abrotonella fosteroides. The only real way to tell this any difference from the Phylactine colensii is the fact that it has that protuberance from the tip, which is like a sharp point. But anyway, that's the most common ways to identify these cushion plants is in their leaf shapes, but you need to have some magnification or macro photography to see that. Here we've got the Acropolis and Mount Geryon from Mount Massive, just another part of beautiful Tasmania. This viewpoint takes a bit of work to get to, requiring off-track hiking, but it's so worth it. Another beautiful area, but to be quite frank, it's all beautiful. This one is very much more easily accessible, being one of the most visited national parks in Tasmania, Cradle Mountain, Lake St Clair National Park. Of course, this is Cradle Mountain on the right there, and to the left is what was known as Little Horn, and both reflecting beautifully in Dove Lake. Bolster Heath Community, Cushion Heath Mosaic. What are these things? You may have noticed this habitat type has been mentioned a few times. Cushion Heath Mosaic or Bolster Heath, it refers to a habitat which comprises a complex mix of species growing together, forming an undulating mosaic of different colours and textures. Within any given square metre, there can be up to 30 plus plants and various species. You can have extensive mats forming, which nearly cover several hectares in size. Quite remarkable. Some more views of this remarkable community. These were at Newdigate Pass, Mountfield National Park, on a not so balmy summer's day, where it was quite cold, windy, and very low cloud and rain. They have endless form and texture, as you can see there. Sadly, most hikers pass by these without even realising how remarkable and rare these communities are. There's another community here at Mountfield at Newdigate Pass called the Bolster Heath String Fen Community. Well, what is that? Well, at Newdigate Pass here in Mountfield, it's an area of conservation significance due to the terraced pools, tarns here that are extremely rare and unusual. The relationship between vegetation, peat, and substrate has produced these terraces that are dynamic in nature. In short, a series of vegetation dams have formed from cushion plants, which have altered the water flowing through them, through this gentle sloping landscape, creating terraced pools. There's a little video here. Hopefully, I'll be able to show you this Bolster Heath String Fen community a little bit better. So I just hope this works. A very balmy summer's day it was. So here we're still looking at Bolster Heath String Fen community. So you can see in the big photo there, occurring from the top right to the bottom left. You can see that terracing which is occurring. In the smaller photo, it shows how a dam wall may start out. Cushions growing on a substrate, dying, then repeating, building up a peaty layer, and maybe slowly changing the water flow through it. That's just probably my simple explanation of it. Anyway, it's a remarkable environment that is very fascinating. Got one more video here. Again, I hope this one works. And that gives you another broader view, and it finishes with a beautiful cushion mosaic with Pterygopappus laurentii. You can see patches of snow there. It was very cold. And very windy. Here's the Pterygopappus lawrencii. Anyway, before I finish, there's a few acknowledgements that are more than necessary. Should say I need to thank my ever patient and loving wife, Janet, who's pretending to be a tree there on the left-hand side. Tully, one of our younger son, Tully, who gets dragged on some of these walks. And also some of the photos that have been used. Most of them have been mine, but there's a couple there that were marked on each photo. So there's some there used with permission from Louise Fairfax. I highly recommend anyone check out her webpage. Does heaps of walking in Tasmania with some magnificent photos and stories. Also, photos used with permission from Fiona Walsh. There's a couple there of the Aboriginella Fosteroides flowers. And also some photos used with permission from David Noble. Highly recommend you check out his site as well. Amazing hiker with incredible photos. And there was just a couple of photos used from iNaturalist under the Creative Commons license. Chris Close, Mick Fitzgerald, Patrice Baxter, Nick Fitzgerald, Casey, Alpine Flora of Australia, and Matt Berger, Sheriff Woody PCT. That's about it, really. So thank you for listening and putting up with me. And if anyone's got any questions, go for it.